streaming live from across Pirate Nation. This is an ECU STEPP Town Hall.
And good afternoon, I should say almost evening to everyone. Welcome to our very first ever an ECU STEPP Town Hall. My name is Sam Huffman. I'm a part of the STEPP 2020 cohort, and I also oversee the STEPP program social media and marketing. Along with us tonight is a panel of experts to answer your questions. We have Danielle Dietz, our Instructional Specialist, Hayden Clark, who is also a part of the cohort of 2020, who is our student for tonight, and Autumn DiMartino, who is the STEPP program's English tutor and mentor. We want to remind everyone tonight that since it is a town hall, that if you have questions, we have the answers. So just submit your questions in the comments field and we'll answer them live. The way it'll work tonight is that any questions that are asked live is what will be priority. The second priority will be anyone who also submitted questions in the comments. In the form that went out previously. So let's go ahead and start everyone by introducing yourself very quickly. If you can introduce yourself by your role, your major, and your hometown. Danielle Dietz, if you can start off first.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. We're so excited to have you here. My name is Danielle Dietz. I'm the Instructional Specialist for the STEPP program. So my primary roles are teaching the STEPP curriculum. I'm the co-advisor for students in the STEPP program, and then I organize and oversee the tutoring program as well. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, Altoona, Pennsylvania. I currently live in Wendell, North Carolina, and I'm just excited to be here.
Hayden?
I'm Hayden Clark. I'm a political science student. I'm part of the 2020 cohort. I don't have many exciting things like Miss Dietz had. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah.
And Autumn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Autumn DiMartino, and I am the English tutor and also a mentor at the STEPP program. So I work with a variety of students. I don't think there's a student in our program, but I haven't met at some point. My major is, just to keep it short, English oriented, and my hometown is Elizabeth City, North Carolina.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. So let's go ahead and get started with some of the questions that were already sent in. And again, if you're watching live, now is your time to ask any questions because we got a panel of experts. So our first question is actually from Charlotte, and her question is, what is the hardest part of your transition from high school to college, and how did STEPP help you? So Hayden, let's have you answer that question.
Well, I had a really unique experience of transitioning during COVID from high school to college. So that was one hard aspect of it. But really what's kept up with me in the challenge is just figuring out what to do with all the free time that college has. Because in high school, everything is set where you have your class at this time, class at this time, class at this time, lunch, 2 more classes, or whatever your high school schedule is. And then you go home and you do some homework. In college, I have 2 50-minute classes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the whole rest of the day to do my homework, hang out with my friends, and do what I want. It's just really balancing that. And STEPP has helped me do that with providing mentors to help plan every single aspect of my day if I need to, or help reinforce like, hey, Hayden, we see you're struggling with this, or you've talked about you're struggling with this. Let's maybe focus on this for a little bit longer today instead of going and hanging out for someone for like 30 minutes, or it's wait a little bit longer to go do this type of thing.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for answering that question. I think that very well answered Charlotte's question, but we have another question from Charlotte that she sent in, and Dr. Dietz, I think you'll be able to answer this probably best about when it comes to clubs and organizations at ECU. What is what are the details of that, especially with the connection to the STEPP program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we encourage our students to get involved on campus. Students in the STEPP program are fully integrated into the larger community here at ECU. We do have some restrictions the first year, and I want to talk about those. So your first year, we really want to prioritize academics, setting those routines, and focusing on making those learning strategies and your academic priorities your focus. So while you can be in a club or organization your first year, you would just refrain from taking on any leadership roles, anything that would be a big time commitment, such as, being the vice president or the treasurer of a club, joining a sorority or fraternity, or working a job. However, your second year, we do lift those restrictions, because by that time we start to fade some of the supports away, because students at that point have kind of internalized some of the academic routines. They've set a precedent for what their performance will look like since their first year. So students absolutely are encouraged to join clubs and organizations. We have quite a few students in sororities and fraternities. We've had students in ROTC. We've had students, I know, like Hayden, in a club Frisbee team. So there's some restrictions, but you're typically not taking on leadership roles your freshman year anyway. So it's just kind of making sure you prioritize those academic necessities.
Great. That's great. And, once you get, past that first year restriction, ECU has so many wonderful opportunities, but STEPP is always there to help you with all of that. We also have a question that was both from Julie and Charlotte that we wanted to put together, because it's quite similar. And the question is, I think we're going to have, I think it was Hayden. Oh, I'm sorry. It was this one from Julie. Julie's first. What is the common hurdle for STEPP students? I think, Hayden, you were going to answer this one.
I think it's hard to say that there's one common hurdle for every STEPP student, because everyone has their individual path, and that's what STEPP really is about, is individuality and supporting that one student through what they need to get done and how they need to get any help or any support they need. But for me personally, when I first came into college, I was an awful writer. So I went to Autumn maybe like 3 times a week. And now I go to Autumn maybe once a week, just going over some emails or that type of stuff. But it really just depends on the student and what they need. And as long as they're asking, STEPP will always provide as much support as they can give and as much support as the student is willing to take.
Got it. Great. Autumn, this is actually the one where we have both Julie and Charlotte. But before I get to that question, I want to remind anyone that's coming in, because I'm watching our viewer count and it's kind of increasing right now. Welcome to an ECU STEPP Town Hall. We are glad that you're here. If you have questions, this is a great time to get your questions answered by a panel of professionals from our instructional specialist, a student, a mentor, and tutor, all on right now to answer your questions. So Autumn, let's get back to one of our questions. And this was actually from both Julie and Charlotte. And the question is, how do you help them with it? So I'm assuming that's like the homework, studying pieces. And describe a typical mentoring session. What is the most memorable way you have helped a STEPP student?
Yeah, those are really great questions, and kind of building off what Hayden and Dr. Dietz had said about coming in that first year and trying to manage time and everything. I would say that's a big part of a mentoring session, is looking over a student's course schedule and their weekly schedule, if there's anything beyond courses, down to even some students like to plan their days down to their meal times, to hangout times with friends. Planning out study times is also very important, and we work that into the Cove hours, try to help establish those fixed study times. So like how Hayden was saying, you come in and you have all this free time suddenly. Well, in a mentoring session, we help you kind of break that down so that you don't feel overwhelmed by it and you're using your time productively, because that can be a big challenge. We might talk about a course more in depth than others, depending on maybe a student has an exam coming up. Sometimes students like to go over a Quizlet study guide that they've had from a professor in a mentor meeting, and we spend our time doing that. If they have a question about like a on-campus resource, or like another thing Hayden said, emails, we go over a lot of like email etiquette with professors and how to send emails to those professors. It's a little bit different than maybe how you would send an email to your high school teacher. You're dealing with different course sections. So some professors want that information in the email. As for the most memorable way that I've helped a student, it's probably the ones that I've known from freshman year all the way up till now, grad school, just seeing how each year I've worked with them, their writing has progressed and changed. And at this point, I could read some writing by them and their name, nothing identifying would be on it, but I would know them by their voice, which everybody has a voice in their writing, given the time to develop it. So seeing that is just really incredible.
That is great. And I think that's one thing that makes ECU STEP so unique is the mentors that are available on hand and the tutors that are available on hand. I and Hayden both can speak from experience of how useful both services are, and we both continue to use it today. Our next question, this will be for you, Dr. Dietz. Julie sent this in as well. How does the STEP program approach differ from other college support programs? There's a lot out there, but how does STEP differ from others?
Yeah, that's a great question, Julie. So first off, there's no fee associated with STEP. So that's one thing that kind of sets us apart from a lot of programs that do have some sort of fee associated with it. We are very much comprehensive. So in some programs are just academic focused, whereas we support the student kind of with all of that transition that you experience your first year into your classes. And then as you kind of transition into the curriculum of your major, and then the focus of transitioning to the career, whether that be graduate school or the workforce. The other thing is, I would say, the fact that we actually start working with students when they are a senior in high school. So you actually begin the application process your junior year. We typically interview the summer as you're a rising senior, and we start the whole transition curriculum the year that students are still in high school. So really kind of supporting that transition.
Great. I think, again, it makes STEP unique, especially that no additional fee. That's such a great point, especially in today's society, that makes STEP sticks out as a great program. Okay, we have another one from Charlotte that was submitted in. But again, before I get to this next question, I want to remind anyone that if you do have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and we'll answer them live. We are here to help you. This is a wonderful opportunity. Again, the whole purpose of a town hall is for the people to ask questions and have a response from the host. So let's go back to our question from Charlotte, and this is actually for you, Autumn. She asked, how many students do you mentor in a semester?
So that number can vary a little bit based on incoming cohort size, and also for students, once they're beyond that first year, freshman year, are no longer required to meet weekly with a mentor once you reach your second semester of your second or sophomore year. So I would say at most, the typical is probably 5 students. And right now, I currently have 2 regular students. We meet once every week. I have one upperclassman who we meet every other week because they've determined that works best for their schedule. And I have a 4th who is as needed, kind of like drop in. And again, this is someone who's upperclassman, and again, we cater to that, like, as need. What do you as the student need? We will help based on that.
Gotcha. Great. Our next question, this is a new one. This is from Lisa. She asked, what qualifies you for the STEP program? Do you have to have a certain criteria to meet that? How about you answer that one, Dr. Dietz?
Sure, that's a great question. So for you to qualify for the STEP program, you would have a documented learning disability. So maybe you were a student that received accommodations in high school with either an IEP, a 504 plan, or some sort of learning plan. And then typically when we talk about learning disabilities or learning differences, we're focusing on the areas of reading, writing, and math. So dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. So if we're looking at those three, then those would be the ones our primary focus. Now, sometimes students also have ADHD, executive functioning, processing, but they're primarily served as a student with a learning disability when they were in K-12. And what was the second part of that question?
And the second part of that question was, do you have a certain criteria to meet?
So within the application process, we do require documentation, and our transition specialist is Ashley Cooper would be the contact for the application process. But you submit the application, there's essays, letters of recommendation, and then a big piece is the interview that you would do in person for acceptance into it. So it's a really thorough application that really demonstrates the student's commitment to the program, and helps us really pick the students to fill that cohort, which is 10 students each year.
And as Dr. Dietz mentioned, thank you, Dr. Dietz. As Dr. Dietz mentioned, it is a thorough application, but there are resources available to help you with that. Our transition specialist, Ashley Cooper, hosts application workshops, both group sessions, one-on-one sessions. She's also available if you need to schedule an appointment, and you can visit our website, step.ecu.edu, as you see on the screen there. That is where you can apply for STEP. That's where you can sign up for an appointment if you have questions about the application. If you're watching us here on social media, if you want to contact us right here on social media, we can also get you assistance through there. Also, there's some new people I can see that are just now joining us for an ECU STEPP Town Hall. Welcome. This is the opportunity for you to ask questions. We have a student, Hayden Clark, if you'll wave. And then we have Autumn DiMartino, our mentor and student. Our mentor and tutor. Well, she's also a student too, through ECU. And then Dr. Dietz, our instructional specialist. So let's get back to some of the questions. We have another one from Bob here. And Dr. Dietz, you're also going to answer, I believe, this one. And it is, what if you've already graduated high school?
So if you've already graduated high school, maybe you're finding out about us because you've applied to ECU and you're looking for resources, or you are a current ECU student, and you maybe find yourself that you're struggling a bit. One of the things that we would do is making sure that we would link you up with some of our resources and partners on campus, like the Disability Support Service or DSS office, as well as the Pirate Academic Success Center, or the PASC. It's our tutoring center. But the really interesting thing is we also have a program called Tassel. So if you are finding about us kind of later, where you've kind of already made the transition to college, maybe you've transferred in, you could join potentially as a Tassel student. There's a separate application for that. It looks a little different. And then we kind of meet with the student and identify their individual needs and identify what level of supports that they would need. So typically their first semester as a Tassel student, they might get some support heavy with curriculum, mentoring, tutoring, and then we kind of, check in and see what supports they need from there. So there is an opportunity for Tassel to still join in to the greater, to access those STEP resources.
Great, awesome. I noticed that our transition specialist is actually tuning in. She has been literally across the state traveling to different schools. So she's tuning in and she said, sign up for the application workshop today. And that's right, step.ecu.edu. That is where you can get help if you're wanting to apply to the STEP program. Again, if you have questions, leave a comment. We'll answer it live. This is what an ECU STEP Town Hall is for. We're going to move on to some of our other questions. And Dr. Dietz, this one, actually, let me go to Hayden because we haven't heard from Hayden in a little bit. Hayden is a part of the STEP 2020 cohort if you're just joining us. So Hayden, how did you choose your major at ECU?
Well, to be honest, when I came out of high school, I had zero idea what I wanted to do. I was like, well, my dad went to business school, so maybe I should go get my degree in business. Then I was like, well, I really love helping kids, especially kids that are in like special ed classrooms, so maybe being a special ed teacher. And then I was like, well, political science also sounds exciting. And then one day I saw a guy in a hard hat, so I was like, maybe construction management too. A lot of just different majors that like did not coincide at all. So I sat down with Dr. Dietz and Mr. Denny, the director of STEP, and was just like, "Hey, I'm thinking about these majors. What can I do?" And they said, "Well, over your first semester, your second semester, let's just take some intro classes in those classes and just see how you're feeling about them. We can do weekly check-ins, like with your mentor, and just gauge how you're feeling about them." After taking some intro classes in like special education, I realized I do not want to be a teacher. That's a lot of work that I don't have the patience for. I went for a business class and I was like, okay, this is pretty good. Then I went to a political science class and I fell in love immediately. And just talking with Dr. Dietz and Mr. Denny, it really solidified that I made the right choice. But I do want to stress it is not like a one day decision of this is the major I want to do, or hey, I want to switch my major. It's not a one day conversation. It's a okay, tell us why. Let's look at the curriculum ahead of time. Let's see what we can do to make this the best thing possible. And with the help of Dr. Dietz, I make my schedule in my major that suits me perfectly because she knows me as a learner and she knows I'm not very good at math at times, or Hayden can't do like 3 writing intensive classes at a time, even though sometimes it turns into them. But it's just figuring out my schedule and having them help me every step of the way to make sure I graduate and I succeed to the highest capability.
That's awesome. And I think this also plays in on an important note that the ECU STEP program does not, again, does not limit a student's choice to as to which major they want to choose. ECU offers over 80 different majors, some of the most diverse in the state of North Carolina. We're very proud of that. So again, ECU STEP program does not limit a student's choice as to which major they can choose. If you have a question about that, this would be a great time to leave something in the chat. No question is too small or too big. That's what we're here for. We're still here for about another 10, 15 minutes. So feel free to ask any questions. Moving on though to our next question, which still does have to actually do with majors. Autumn, this one's for you. How does tutoring help a student with any major?
So one thing that I've really enjoyed about being a writing tutor is I get to explain to people how writing in English is important no matter if you choose a STEM path, a humanities path, or something else, because every major here has required writing intensive courses. And that means I get to meet with a lot of students. I've met with fashion merchandising, social work, political science, journalism, construction management, neuroscience, all these different majors that are students in our program or have graduated from our program. And besides the 2 required gen ed composition courses, there's every major does have their writing intensive components. A lot of them have capstone where you write up a final project of some sort. Get to help people with the 2 different formatting styles, depending on if you're social sciences or more humanities, APA and MLA, or if you're journalism, then there's AP. And Hayden, working with you, I've learned that there's even a special one just for political science majors. So all these things, it's not just like checking like for grammar or like, oh, did you, how are you doing with run-on sentences? Of course, that's part of going over it, but it's also understanding like the big picture part of writing, like coming up with your thesis statement and doing research. So things like that build up to that final writing component. Nobody comes in, just sits down and writes their paper, discussion board post without planning it out ahead of time. That's what makes it very hard to do that. But going over it step by step and seeing how it's unique to each person is really interesting experience, really good experience.
Awesome. And you're a wonderful tutor. You really are.
Thank you.
We have a new question from Ashley Rudolph. And the question is, what qualities are you looking for from students that make application to the STEP program as far as extracurricular activities? I think Dr. Dietz and maybe Hayden. I know Dr. Dietz, you could touch on this.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we had mentioned the application process earlier, and this is definitely, I want to make sure we can share her information in the chat to connect with our transition specialist, Ashley Cooper. But I would say the best extracurricular activities are the ones that you're most interested in. We want to know you as a learner, as a student, what are you involved in? What is a good outlet for you? So I can't say like, oh, we want everyone to be in student government because that demonstrates leadership. Well, you can be a leader in many different ways and many different formats. So, we're looking for ones that, demonstrate just what you're interested in, anything that can show your leadership or your self-advocacy or your communication abilities. I think that those would be all great qualities as well. And two, when we look at the personal essay and the interviews, just bringing that information to the table, because we welcome and love to see a diverse group of applicants. So it's not, a cookie cutter. These are the extracurriculars you need to get involved with.
I would also say during the interview process, like the interview is meant for you to see if you feel you have a fit in STEP and for STEP to see if you fit into STEP. It's not just a one-way interview. You want to make sure you fit with STEP and you fit with ECU. So during my interviews, I talked about I enjoy working at the Y, I enjoy playing Frisbee, and talked about those things I enjoy so that they can understand like Hayden enjoys these things and maybe we can encourage him later, see if he fits into the culture we already have at STEP.
That's great. Thank you both, Dr. Dietz and Hayden, for asking that question. As you can see, Ashley Rudolph said thank you. Great question, Ashley. I also replied to your comment. You should be able to see that, giving our transition specialist email address. I don't know if I can follow up with you since you posted on YouTube, but if not, email her Cooper ASH22@ecu.edu. You should be able to see my reply. If not, you can comment back and we can try to get something together. Again, if you have any questions, we have just about 5-10 minutes left. Feel free to comment and we will answer your questions live, just like Ashley. Dr. Dietz, this is a question for you that we did get. First year STEP students, they're required to take a STEP course known as EDUC. What learning strategies do they learn in the course? And also, what is this thing called a CPR?
Right. So the class, we call it STEP class, but the course code is EDUC because it's in the education department. But what we focus on are different learning strategies. One of the first ones we do is a starter strategy called SLANT that focuses on your ability to be engaged with lectures. Then a big one we do is Pirates, and it's just a coincidence that we are the Pirates of ECU, but it's called Pirates. And that is a test-taking strategy. That's right. And that is a big one. And again, just like Autumn had mentioned, writing across the disciplines, you take tests across many different disciplines. So this test-taking strategy is one that can be applied in a variety of settings. Then we focus on a goal-setting strategy, as well as a vocabulary strategy. Those are the ones that we found that if we focus in on those, are kind of both academic and personal, building your understanding of yourself as a learner, setting goals for yourself, but then also applying very specific ones. The CPR is the course progress record. And that is basically like a weekly progress report. I know in high school, sometimes they come out like every 3 weeks, and teachers do those. Well, one of the biggest differences between high school and college you'll find is that as a student and as a learner, you have to take the lead on a lot of things. So what you'll do for a CPR, you turn those in each week as part of class, and you do a check-in with what has been done that week, what grades you have gotten. So that way you have a constant pulse on what your grade is in all of your classes. That's a great early indicator to identify if you need additional tutoring, something you can bring up with your mentor, and then allows the STEP staff, such as myself, to be able to see how you're doing in your classes. Since we can't access your course on Canvas, which is the LMS that we use here at ECU, but we can kind of get a sense for how you're doing by looking at those CPRs each week.
Great. Awesome. I'm going to have about probably two or three more questions, and then we will officially wrap up tonight. But if anyone does have other questions, please feel free to comment them. Those are always our priority to get those answered, but these are some questions that we already had previously recorded. Autumn, as a mentor, how do you ensure, though, that those learning strategies are being used with your mentees?
So that's part of when we sit down a mentor meeting and we're going through courses and students discuss like, hey, I've got an exam coming up and my biology class, and this is a really challenging course for me. So we'll sit down and be like, okay, let's look at the date that you have that exam versus your other assignments and how much time you feel that you need to study and prepare for it. Okay, you have this test taking strategy that you learned in your STEP class and you want to apply that to it. How are we going to work that into your study plan leading up to this exam? So a lot of times a mentor meeting will be a good chunk of doing that, talking through that with the student, seeing what study strategy does work best for them in that. Going through like goal setting as far as like organization and executive functioning, that can be beneficial for that. It makes up another big part of our mentor meetings. And part of that comes from using the planners that go out in your first year students each get a planner. And we go through, and that's where we can record a lot of like, okay, exam is on next Friday. That means from today I have 2 weeks to start preparing for this, but I also have a paper that's due the Wednesday that week as well. So how am I going to balance all this and still remember to eat?
That's tough.
You can, as mentors, we'll go through and plan that stuff down to the detail with you if you would like, or if you're like, I know when I eat, that always happens. I will never starve before studying. So then we'll look at then like, okay, here's your time that you're spending in the Cove. How much of that do you want to devote towards studying versus prepping for this paper? Let's not get too caught up in one thing and that neglects the other. It's another strategy we go over as how to balance studying and work so that you don't get too like hyper focused on one thing and something else falls.
Yeah, very, very good. Hayden, you will be our last question unless anyone else. I know the pressure's on. Unless anyone else has any questions. We still have multiple viewers watching right now. So if you do have a question, feel free to leave it. We still got just a little bit of time. So again, leave it in the comments and we'll answer it live. And by the way, too, I don't know if I mentioned this previously, but if you are rewatching the ECU STEPP Town Hall, you can still leave a question and we can get back to you. We have the ability to still reply, and we'll make sure you are taken care of. Okay, Hayden. And again, I'm watching through the comments, make sure we don't have anyone else. But Hayden, first and second half of their second year, STEP students are required to take 15 hours of study hall weekly. How was your experience, Hayden, with study hall, the requirement?
Well, when I first heard about it, I got very stressed and very confused because in high school, I'd never studied for 15 hours at once. That seemed crazy and insane to me. But then I started to think about it. In high school, it's so structured. You're in class every day for 7 hours a day, just different classes. College, as I said earlier, is very different, where you have 50-minute classes. But then you have all this time in between. what are you going to do? It just made sense to go to the co for 30 minutes or like a few hours at a time and just chunk out those 15 hours. And STEP really helps you schedule that out so you're not doing all 15 at once, because no one can study well like that.
That's a great answer to that. We do have a question here from Julie. Her question is, can you describe orientation week? I think Dr. Dietz, you probably can answer this best.
Yeah, so students in the STEP program attend a ECU orientation, which I think is a one day event, but we actually have what we call boot camp. So we actually have a student that went through boot camp, and he says ours is more challenging. I think he was being nice though. So during the orientation week, or what we call boot camp, it's a time where we actually bring students and families together. We kind of review the expectations and the contract of what it means to be a STEP student, what the expectations are, but also to help familiarize yourself to campus. And then, we jump right in. We actually do a lecture, note-taking. We do a debrief on the note-taking. We do some fun things like to start with leadership and community building. This past year, we did a ropes course and a scavenger hunt across campus. So we like to mix in some of the fun, some of the university-wide things, but then also really getting you in gear, jump starting you for the start of the semester to be in that academic focus.
Great. Awesome. Great answer to that. Thank you, Julie, for that question. If we don't have any more questions, if anyone wants to ask, we can take at least one more final question. If not, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping it up. But if someone wants to ask a question, go ahead and drop it, and we can pause and immediately get to it. We do. I think we have one. Great job with all the questions. Very informative. And we actually have another question that just came in on YouTube. From
I think that's a fake one.
Oh, it is? Oh, yeah, it sure is. Thank you for reading that quickly. I did. We'll go back to this other one. Great job with all the questions. Very informative. Thank you, Lisa.
I love the pirate flag.
I know. She knows what emojis we're supposed to use at ECU.
Yeah.
Very good.
I didn't know that emoji existed. Whoa.
Yeah, pirate flag. Again, I apologize for that other question. But before we end, what is one word that best describes STEP? And before we say, Ashley, thank you. Go Pirates.
Go Pirates.
Sure. Go Pirates. So before we end, if everyone can quickly just say, what is one word that best describes STEP? To you, Dr. Dietz, you can start.
I'll say comprehensive.
Comprehensive. Hayden.
Community.
And Autumn.
Being the English major that I am, I'm going to bend these rules a bit. It's a single phrase, not a single word, but a single phrase, one of a kind.
Very good. Very good. And I think there's all similar steps. Very, very well. And as Sharon said, thank you for great information. Most welcome, Sharon. And we thank everyone who watched tonight. This is actually one of our highest ever watched live streams at STEP. So we all thank you very much for watching that number. So thank you for creating our highest watched live stream. Again, if you ever rewatch this, you can still leave a question in the comments, and we can still reply to you, whether that be YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. We can get to you. And Julie, again, thank you for your time for watching and tuning in to an ECU STEP Town Hall. We truly appreciate it. All right. Well, if that does it, thank you everyone for tuning in to our very first ECU STEP Town Hall. If you want to learn more about the STEP program, you can visit our website, step.ecu.edu. That's where you can find the application, reach out to us, all that stuff. If you also are interested in touring Pirate Nation, aka ECU and STEP, visit our website, step.ecu.edu. You can find all of that by just in one click on the website. So that will do it. So I'm going to go ahead and close for tonight. I'm Sam Huffman, the STEP 2020 cohort student and also social media marketing manager. That is Danielle Dietz, our instructional specialist. Hayden Clark, STEP 2020 cohort student, and Autumn DiMartino, our tutor and mentor. Go Pirates, and have a wonderful evening.